Nope, I'm still not done with AMD's Navi-based graphics cards and more are yet to come, but I do have a different brand flavor for you this time. Sapphire. Hi guys, Matthew here and welcome back again to my channel. After checking out a couple of MSI's and Gigabyte's RX 5700 XT and RX 5700 models, feel free to watch those on my channel. I'll put a link to one of them in the right top corner of this video. Today I'm going to switch it up a bit by taking a look at Sapphire's RX 5700 Pulse model. Yeah, I know it's not the RX 5700 XT Nitro Plus model, but I'm hoping I'll also be able to check that one out soon. Right, Sapphire? Right. But as you will see later on, the Pulse series has a lot to offer, and honestly I was pleasantly surprised by how it performs cooling wise. The overall design of the card is not too flashy, the outer plastic shroud kinda feels a bit cheap to the touch and looks cheesy in my opinion, while this big metal backplate sort of makes up for it, so the card is overall still fairly neutral and will probably go along in most of the builds. On the other hand, you'll have to keep in mind that it has a red LED Sapphire logo on the side, which cannot be controlled or turned off using the software, but you will probably rather have to unplug it. The graphics card is pretty wide as its shroud overhangs the PCB. They probably wanted to make it flush with the heat pipes, while this also introduced a great opportunity for the PCI Express power connector to be tucked in and hidden. Plus, Sapphire made some room between the 8-pin and 6-pin PCI Express power connectors which are needed to power up this model, so you can tuck away that extra 2 pins in there from the other cable just like nothing happened. As for the rest of the connectors on it, you'll get 3 display ports and 1 HDMI video output. Underneath the shroud you'll find a pretty meaty cooling assembly with a big aluminum heatsink carrying 3 6mm nickel-plated copper heat pipes, 2 separate plates for cooling off the GDDR6 video memory, and components for the 7+ 2-phase power delivery system, finished off with another copper plate for the GPU itself. On top of all of that we have 2 95mm fans, and what's most interesting about them is that they are easily removable just by undoing a single screw, and then you just pop the fan out as it has this hot swappable like connection, and this way you can do some dust maintenance in no time, or you can replace them if for example the fan bearing goes bad. Of course, they also support 0 RPM fan mode when the card is not under load, and speaking of that, the idle temperature is set around 45 degrees Celsius. Turning the heat up a bit, I was seeing fairly decent results. The GPU temperature was hanging mostly around 70 degrees Celsius, while the GPU hotspot and memory temperature were closer to neighborhood of 80 degrees Celsius, with VRM temperature being around 60 degrees Celsius most of the time. It seems like those are the temperature targets after which is Sapphire strictly going for with this model, together with the GPU clock speed, and depending on the load level, the fans would spin a bit faster or slower. Usually that was around 10 to 1100 RPM when everything settles in, although they do sometimes ramp up at first to about 1400 RPM and then gradually taper off to those lower values. This theory is additionally confirmed with the fact that when I did my overclocking of the card, where I've also did some undervolting on it, the temperatures remained more or less the same, while the fan speed went down by about 200 to 300 RPM. Here's a short sound clip of the card under stock and OC load, while also showing you the sound meter for a measurement comparison. Although it has a dual profile BIOS setup, one is called the silent mode and the other one is the so to speak normal boost mode. You can jump in between them using a dedicated switch found on the card. The silent mode is basically not needed at all since the card, as you've just heard, is really quiet to begin with, especially when undervolted, plus you will lose some performance with it since it clocks down the GPU. Before I continue over to benchmarking results, if you have any questions or concerns about this graphics card, feel free to leave me a comment down below and I will help you out. And down there in the description box, to be precise, you will also find my setup which I use to test this PC out, to test this graphics card out. Okay, let's now check out the performance of this card. As expected and as you probably already saw by now, especially if you're looking to buy a RX 5700 series card, this particular model brings in more than enough performance output for high refresh rate gaming at 1080p resolution. If not for that, regular 1440p gaming is definitely its sweet spot, while 4K should be doable if you don't go all in with graphics settings. With the graphics card being overclocked using the settings which I showed a bit earlier, the GPU clock speed peaked mostly around 1800 MHz instead of 1700 MHz stock, and the video memory was running at just a bit below 14.9 GHz effectively. I got roughly around 5% performance increase, which is not a lot, but is something considering it's free. Plus, the power consumption goes down quite a bit because of the undervolting, around 20 watts less on the graphics card, which is roughly around 10% lower. Lastly, Sapphire has a new version of their Trick software utility, which is now pretty bare bones looking, at least when it comes to actually controlling the card. Although I must admit that I'm a bit confused with how this software should actually look like and what you can do with it, because on the Sapphire's official page, the 7.0 version looks completely different than mine here. Maybe it just doesn't support the Pulse series yet. In here you can check out your card specifications and monitor its components, while at that last Tricks Boost tab you can basically enable resolution scaling, where it renders a game on a bit lower resolution. You can choose by how much by pulling a slider on a scale which goes between performance and quality, and after it upscales that image, giving you in the end a little bit of an extra performance output. But you can do something similar on your own through the AMD Radeon settings, create a custom resolution and turn on the Radeon image sharpening. To no one's surprise, Sapphire again made a pretty compelling graphics card model when it comes to price to performance ratio for the segment which it represents. That's the path they've been using for as long as I can remember. Of course, there's been a mishap or two here and there, but usually you can expect from them to be consistent, as also was the case this time. In the end, you will be the one who decides what works best for you based on the information I've shown you here. That's it for this time from me. Thank you once again for watching. Toss me a thumbs up if you enjoyed my content. That really helps a lot. And if you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe. And if you already are, be sure to press that notification bell down below so you don't miss out on a new video. And until then, catch you later, guys.